Everybody, Zach here. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about my 20 years of experience of using various psychoactive plants, and also why right now and for the past like 5 or 6 months I've been much more moderate and have been implementing regular fasting periods and abstaining from psychoactives. Because to some of you that might be like common sense, like duh, of course you're going to abstain sometimes. But I'm going to unpack my journey a little bit and help you to understand why I was oblivious to choosing to do that, or why I convinced myself not to do that for so long. So, to begin, I am 36 years old right now, and the majority of my psychoactive exploration began around age 16. I had done a little bit before then, but my really heavy use of cannabis and coffee, as well as psychedelic plants, really started at around age 16 and progressed for a couple of years and went through a lot of waves over the last 20 years. The whole time that I have been a psychoactive plant user, I have been attempting to be very mindful and attempting to be smart about it. And I'm really grateful for that, because even though I have been foolish and have done things overboard and whatever along the way, done plenty of things overboard, I'm grateful that I was graced with the inspiration to not be a total idiot with psychoactives. Because as you will see in this video, I definitely have had some negative effects and weird effects through the years. But I'm sure if I was not even caring at all and was just like, F it, I'm gonna do whatever I want, I would probably be in a much worse place now than I would be. Had I chosen that, I would probably be much worse off. So around age 16, it was all about just exploring and kind of like learning what my mind is capable of, through just either smoking, even just having fun with coffee and realizing that you can get amped up and get excited at the drop of a dime as soon as you drink coffee, or beginning to explore psychedelic plants and seeing that like there's this dreamlike way of looking at the world. It was originally just kind of this open-ended exploration, but very quickly for me, over about 1 year, I would say by the time I was 17, I was getting pretty strict about viewing these experiences as something very powerful and something to not really mess around with. Despite that, though, I definitely still messed around with it and did a lot more than what I probably should have done. So what the point of this video is, aside from me just like recapping my life, is I'm hoping to inspire you all to be more mindful and careful in your decision making. I am still very much a proponent of plant medicines. I believe that God designed every plant that's in the garden, and each plant to have unique medicinal properties, and even some with recreational properties, and I think that's totally fine. But it's about finding the narrow way of proper usage of all of these things, and I think that's something that each person has to find for themselves. And after 20 years of trying to find that, I feel like I'm finally making a little bit of ground, and I hope that this video can sort of condense the lessons that I have gotten through these 20 years and make them more usable and bite-sized for you, so that you don't have to take 20 years to start being a little bit more responsible. So thank you for joining me again, guys. Please comment, like, subscribe, and all of that. I'm hoping to start making videos a little bit more regularly. My life has been really through the ringer in the past year. I've had a lot of crazy stuff happen, and it's starting to slow down a little bit. And I would love to be able to get on this rhythm and start communicating with you all and discussing plant medicine, spirituality, etc. So I took a bunch of notes. I'm going to start going over them, and feel free to comment with any questions or ideas along the way, and I will try my best to review the comments while the video is going on, and if not, I will try to go back through them. So, my experience timeline of 20 years of using psychoactive plants. My original experiences began all the way back in year 2003, which is, I guess, 21 years ago. I had entirely, between the period of 2004 and 2007, which for me was like middle high school until early college age, I had entirely too many psychedelic experiences. I definitely was overusing things a lot more during that period, but I think it comes with the territory of being a rambunctious youth. You know, we all make a little bit more silly mistakes at young ages. So I had a handful of, in terms of non-psychedelic stuff, coffee and weed I have pretty much used daily, like my whole life. So I've gone through periods of doing like more or less of those, but I have overused the crap out of cannabis and coffee for the 20 years. And through that, I tried to use them in a way that was efficacious to my mind and my emotions. I wasn't entirely reckless and just stoning myself to the floor to where I can't do anything. I was always writing, doing philosophy. I went to school for a while. I was never really an entirely like a cultural dropout. I started my own business during this time, you know, had a lot of successes. I had girlfriends and had good mingling with friends and all of that. So it's not like, in the spectrum of abuse, I'm definitely not like the far end of abusers of things, but as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I was closer to the abusive side than I ever intended to be, which is why I'm trying to make this. So coffee and weed were pretty much like a constant thing for me. It was always fun to drink some coffee, always fun to smoke weed, and always fun to combine them and to write poems and to philosophize and walk around drinking my coffee and smoking my joint and just thinking about life and meditating and all of that. And some of that was great. You know, I don't think all of that is bad or sinful necessarily, but I definitely kind of got overly hedonistic and too into my own experience and my own feelings over that time. So I'll try to unpack that more as I go through these notes. So from 2004 to 2007, in terms of psychedelic plants, meaning mushrooms, mescaline cactus, I guess during those periods, I tried Amanita, I think once during that period. Mostly those two were what I was really doing a lot of. I had entirely too many experiences between 2004 and 2007. Between 2008 and 2017, right? So that 9-year period, I had a handful of stronger psychedelic experiences, but really not a whole lot. I went through like a health crisis around the age, or in year 2007, started having a lot of like chronic pains and a lot of just stuff going on, a lot of like demonic battles, you could say, in terms of like my experience of things. Life just got really crazy around 2007. And ultimately that felt like a curse. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, everything is so complicated and stressful for me now. But looking back, it was maybe almost like a little speed bump for me too, to slow me down, because I probably just would have been super crazy and overdoing the psychedelic plants a whole lot more had I not had that unique thorn in my flesh to kind of like slow me down and humble me a little bit. So between 2008 and 2017, when I was going through like a lot of like chronic pain and just like stressful inner experiences, I was not like eating eighths of mushrooms all the time or anything like that. I was doing microdoses periodically and smaller doses, but it wasn't really that out of control during that period. And then from 2018 until the present now in 2024, I've had only a few like medium strength experiences and mostly explored like microdosing or like light trip territory. So like the majority of my crazy overuse was a long time ago, but honestly, I do feel like there's some lasting impact from that. Probably some long-lasting positives as well, but I overdid it, and I'm starting to kind of understand and characterize what exactly that overuse did. So my functional goals with using psychoactives varied through the years. So from like 2003 through 2005, I was very experimental, and I was exploring the mind and just enjoying the thrills of seeing what all could happen. From 2005 until 2017, I had what I considered a more refined philosophy of psychoactive use. The goal was to see the truth and pursue the truth by means of peeling back these filters of conditioning that were in my mind. I saw psychedelics as an evolutionary agent which could advance the mind and unlock the potential that I was capable of. As you'll see as I go on, my philosophy on that has very much changed over the years, but I understand where young Zach was going with that. You know, there's slivers of truth in that, but you know, the tricky thing about truth is that if you add a little bit of confusion or deception into it, it's really not the same thing anymore. So this philosophy of function paralleled this shamanistic worldview that I developed, and I'm sure you can see in some of my earlier videos if you've watched any of those. I perceived psychedelics and plant medicines as like spiritual gates and things that could unlock different potentials. As our mind opened up, I saw it as paralleling these spiritual openings and these changes in like the way that we are flowing through potential and growing through time. And again, I think that there's some validity to that, but my worldview has drastically changed over the years, and I also see that I was naive in perceiving it the way that I did at that time. So was it hedonism, which is like self-indulgence and just getting high on yourself and what you want to do, just living for pleasure? Was it hedonism or was it medicine? From 2005 onward, I attempted to be responsible and to use these plants as tools, like I said. But looking back, the extent of my fixation on hedonism is very apparent. I definitely got way too lost in the vibes and the experiences and the thrills of everything. I was responsible enough to avoid total oblivion of my conditioning and total destruction of my mind, thank God. But I was far from responsible, true medicinal use. Looking back, there was definitely a lot of overuse of things, you know. And some of you that are regular psychoactive users may be under the same sort of illusion, perhaps, where you think that there's something efficacious about doing it all in these like either high doses or doing it with like extreme regularity. And I would encourage you to slow down and consider the future and consider what yourself is going to be thinking 10 years from now or 20 years from now, because all of us are going to look back and realize we were doing something foolish, whether we're psychoactive users or not. So if you are a psychoactive user doing something that's changing your brain chemistry and changing your neurological pathways in a fundamental way, you should really hit the brakes a little bit with your consideration and with your assumptions. And if 36-year-old Zach could go back and talk to 16-year-old Zach, that's definitely part of what I would want to communicate. I became, in the question of is it hedonism or medicine, I reflect on this quote from the movie Half-Baked, which I watched in high school, a stoner movie, where there's one of the guys, when he's talking about the different types of stoners, he talks about the enhancement smoker, which is like somebody who says anytime you smoke, it's just going to enhance everything you experience. And I always thought that was really funny and pertinent, because I was an enhancement smoker. I would consider, oh, if you smoke a joint before you go to the movies, it's always going to make the movie better. If you smoke a joint before you go do this, it's always going to make it that much more novel. But I became an enhancement tripper as well. And I wasn't doing this stuff every day, so I'm sure that there's way further tiers of abuse that I wasn't in. But I definitely got absorbed into the philosophy of the enhancement tripper, which is to say that I believed that pretty much any experience is going to be more rich and more invigorating and meaningful if we were in a psychedelic state of mind. So now, I'm going to try to make this video somewhat short. I'm going to go through the notes as quick as I can, so please bear with me. The good, the bad, and the weird. We're looking back at this 20 years of using plant medicines. Let's go over the good, the bad, and the weird. The good is that I had a lot of enriching experiences. I took a lot of notes. I explored philosophy and poetry. I did a lot of writing. I had a lot of amazing discussions through this time with people, and I really challenged my mind to reach the pinnacle of what I could reach in terms of philosophy and asking questions and breaking down my assumptions. The plant medicine use was very effective for all of that. I do believe that my mind benefited in some ways from all the plant medicine use, and that includes the weed, the coffee, and the psychedelics. I don't think it was all necessarily bad. I did even a good amount of fasting and meditation and prayer during this time. It very much opened me up to the reality of the spiritual experience that is inherent in all of our daily lives. And I was wise enough, I guess, or conscious enough to at least explore sober spirituality during this time too. But I definitely overdid the psychoactive stuff so much that it kind of like swallowed up the sober spiritual experiences into like a big puddle of psychoactive stuff always going on in my mind. The bad the bad that I got from all these psychoactive uses, I got so wrapped up in my truth quest as an individual and my philosophy quest that I often opted for time alone to write and or use psychedelics over spending time with friends and enjoying simple things. This did create a certain drab view of the mundane, and it left me seeking excitement and philosophy over simple relations with people and enjoying simple experiences that are here in life. Through this way of thinking and this way of approaching, one can really alienate themselves. And that's kind of what I learned. It was definitely some of the bad is that I wound up not really developing nearly as strong of relations with all the beautiful friends that I had. And I wound up being like kind of like a poetic weirdo that wanted to like spend time and just walk around the woods and write. Even if I was sober, it's not like, oh, I'm always just getting high and going and writing. A lot of it was, I'm just going to go walk around tonight and go write or go sit in the woods and meditate. Seemingly like a good thing. From my view, it was like, this is like the spiritual thing as I'm going straight to the core of the spiritual experience and trying to spend my time wisely. But looking back, it's like, dude, I had so many amazing friends that I didn't spend nearly enough time with. And I didn't cherish these simple experiences of like, whatever, going on a float trip with a friend or going and hanging out or just sitting there and having dinner with somebody. Like I did some of those things, but in my mind, I was like way too caught up on this spiritual truth quest to really take those things seriously. Like I was just saying, the mundane, like I started to consider all of the things other than this like spiritual trippy world that came from plant medicines or meditation. I considered everything below that to be kind of like mundane and lacking. And at the time, I would have probably argued that that was how I viewed it. And I would have been like, oh no, the mundane is beautiful and the spiritual is there. But looking back, it's very obvious. And the fruits of it are apparent. There's so many amazing friends that I had in high school that I really did not continue to kindle those relationships nearly as much as I could. And that's really a shame, because I can't go back and just snap my fingers and make all of those friendships blossom. Some of those people I'm still in contact with, but 20 years of not really being that great of a friend and like sharing simple relations that all of them were sharing with each other, I consider that part of the bad that I went through. One of the negative impacts of overusing all these plants. And then the weird. What are the weird effects that I got from overdoing all these psychoactive plants? While psychedelics were effective in helping me look past my assumptions and to ask deep questions, I can see now in retrospect that by playing with my conditioning and the beliefs that I had with my beliefs, without any sort of structure to check and balance those crazy ideas, is actually kind of dangerous in retrospect, I'm realizing, and it could have had even worse repercussions. So again, what I consider the most weird is that the weird effects is that by having these plants accessible that can challenge your questions and your assumptions and your beliefs, I did not understand how to take seriously the potency of that and the implication of what it is to rip through all your beliefs and rip through all your assumptions. It sounds like a very pure thing to be like, I'm free of assumption and I'm just viewing the world in a neutral way. But the thing is you view the world in that unconditioned way through ripping your neurology apart. Like you're trimming the weeds of your neurology in a way that can be very dangerous. I think in the spectrum of like dangerous effects, I am grateful and blessed that I did not get hit with more crazy conditioning from that. But looking back, I should have been way more careful and way more wise. I sort of like fell under the assumption that this is kind of like an Eastern view that I see a lot of people, spiritual people, sort of talk about in conversations nowadays. The idea that underneath your conditioning and underneath your beliefs is like the real you. And I very much sort of took the bait on that. I bit the hook on that idea big time. And I felt that like the more that I could strip away the conditioning, the more that I was like seeing the real reality and it was the real me. But what I didn't really fully understand is that we inherently always have beliefs. We inherently always have conditioning. You're never going to just rip that all apart and just be in some kind of enlightened kind of state. You're just reconditioning yourself. You're giving yourself a new belief. So that begs the question of what really is proper, harmonious, and efficacious conditioning. What is efficacious belief, right? So next section is what I did right. Oh, somebody talking about Jesus. Yeah, this all lands in my Christian experience. I don't really go into that. It's too much in this video, but I am definitely in a very different worldview now than I was before, and I love Jesus too. So thanks for your comment there. What I did right and what I did wrong. The safe practices that I developed during my years of heavy psychoactive use probably kept me from some of the more negative consequences, and I'm grateful for that. The safe practices that I did were abstaining from anything that I considered would dampen the mind or cause intoxication. So from the age of 17 until just a couple of years ago, I did not touch alcohol at all. Like, I considered it low vibe, negative, it's just gonna bring you down, it's not helping you to pursue truth. And there's some truth in that, for sure. I don't use a lot of alcohol now by any means, but that was one of the safe practices I developed early on. It's like, no intoxicants. Did no alcohol, no pills, no ecstasy, anything that I saw people using that I saw the fruits of it as being shallow. I was like out with that 100%. I was very, I don't know, I consider myself like monk-like, where I'm like, I'm disciplined and I'll never touch any of these things. And that was good, you know what I mean? There was some strands of some monk-like purity in that, but I was not nearly as pure and monk-like as I sort of convinced myself that I was. And maybe some of you are in the same boat with that now, and maybe some of you are younger and facing similar crossroads as I faced, you know, and I'm hoping that you can challenge yourself and think this through a little bit more than I did. Another especially important safe practice that I had with my psychedelic and psychoactive plant use was never combine psychedelics with something that's a drug. And what I mean by that, I considered anything intoxicating to be a drug, and then anything that was psychedelic or a plant medicine was like mind expanding, and in some way was like a different category of psychoactives. And I still actually believe that. I think that, you know, you can abuse the psychedelics and turn them into an intoxicant, but you can't really take something intoxicating and make it into something like mind expanding. You might be able to use something that's intoxicating in low doses and sparingly and have it perhaps be efficacious in your experience over time. But there is a difference between those types of things. And I'm really grateful that I had this safe practice of never combining the two. When I would go to music festivals, I would like way overdo eating mushrooms and even like acid and all kinds of stuff. You know, I'm focusing on plant medicines here, but I did a good amount of acid in my high school years as well. What I really never did, and what I saw as foolish, was all these people at the festivals that were like tripping and drinking, or like doing pills in the trip, and like or like cocaine and stuff like that. Like, I never really messed with anything hard, barely at all. The amount of time that I experimented with anything that was bad was so short-lived, and I'm grateful for that. But like, it seems really dangerous to combine the two. If you open your mind up and you have all your conditioning ripped open, like I was describing before, if you're on some kind of psychedelic plant that is fundamentally changing your neurological pathways, and then you're also intoxicating yourself and just getting effed up and partying, I saw that as a huge clash. I got a comment here. Some people say not to use cannabis on the come up, but it's nice on the come down. You know, cannabis is one that's kind of like right on the line. It's easy for that to be an intoxicant, but I think it sort of has psychedelic properties too. It's one that I continued to use all the time up until very recently, so I was always a strong advocate for it. And I still am, but I'm much more moderate, and I'm wanting to encourage other people to be more careful and mindful with cannabis. I did combine cannabis with psychedelics quite a bit, so that wasn't one that I considered to be a clash on that, but it's definitely something to be careful with. And then the other safe practice that I had, and I stuck to, was only use low to medium doses and lean towards moderation with your use. So I overdid psychedelics like a whole lot. I did a whole bunch of them through those years, but I was never trying to just go up the stairwell to do higher and higher doses and higher and higher doses. And I see some people, especially in the festival community, run up that stairwell to where they're starting on an eighth of mushrooms, and next year they're doing like an ounce or just something crazy, like something way above things I've ever even done. Or with acid, you know, starting off one hit, oh, that was fun. Next time they do two, and then before long they're on like 10 hits, you know. I think partially why I was able to like not want to run up that stairwell is because I focused so much on meditation and prayer and trying to be conscious about this stuff, you know, because the more that I prayed and meditated, the more that I saw that like life was inherently very psychedelic and mystical without any of these plant medicines. And so I started to see it as kind of like foolish and dangerous to just run up the stairwell and end up doing these large doses. Because even the low doses, when you're familiar with meditation and with prayer, even like a tiny bit of any psychoactive is extremely strong, you know. It just is, you know. Psychedelics are inherently linked to like your disposition. So when you get your disposition to a place where you're looking for those spiritual things and you're looking for philosophy, you'll see that it can be very powerful even on small amounts of these things. Another safe practice that I developed was always keep your stimulus in a healthy and pure place during trips. No debauchery, nothing reckless, etc. Trying to be like a monk was my aim, with the goal being to fully utilize the neurological benefits. And that's pretty self-explanatory. Excuse me. I wouldn't have wanted to like party in any debaucherous way. The things that I did that I considered more like sinful and like the less pure parts of my lifestyle, you know, like lust and all these different things that I struggled with as a kid, I would very much resist combining that with the psychedelic experiences, because I felt like when you're in that hypersensitive neurological state that it would be very dangerous to bring in the debaucherous sort of stuff that, you know, you could expose yourself to. And I think there was definitely something to that, and I would encourage anybody who uses plant medicines to consider implementing that safe practice. Oh my gosh, the sun is moving and I'm just like cooking back here now. It's okay though. Despite all these rules of safe practice in my psychoactive use, I very much overdid it big time and had far too many strong experiences within a few years. Taking the more ascetic part of my goals more seriously, the more spiritually pure parts of my goals more seriously, would have gone a very long way and probably helped me to land in a much healthier place with my general mindset, and would have led me to be way more conscious about developing healthy relations through the years. You know, I overdid it, and I feel like every single time I overdid it probably had some degree of a negative implication. And I don't think there's any way around that, you know, like for anybody. You could say like you're doing it just the right amount, and I definitely felt I was doing it just the right amount. But if you are overdoing anything more than you really need, it's not going to be free of consequence. You're going to have some sort of negative effect from pretty much anything you do. Here, let me see if I can move this real quick. All right, cool. It was good that I stayed away from hard drugs and what I considered to be like bad, intoxicating things. Like that was definitely a good thing that I did, because those things ended up killing some of my close friends. But hedonism and selfishness definitely still got the better of me. See, partially how I like deluded myself and convinced myself to overdo it so much was that I was like the responsible one in my early friend group, where I was like, nope, I'm not gonna party, I'm not gonna drink, I'm not gonna do the pills. And there was something good to that. You know, I mean, it was great that I was striving to be responsible. But over the years, you know, like I sort of deluded myself into thinking that what I was doing was perfectly right and justified just because I was being more responsible than some of the people around me. And looking back, it's like in plenty of other ways, I was being less responsible. I was overdoing some of these things that they weren't overdoing. You know, it's sort of like we all choose to dig our own grave in our own way, you know, and I sort of like was like, oh, look at all those people digging a grave. That's just super bad. Mine over here is so much more pure. But looking back, it was all just different paths of destruction, you know? Not all psychoactive plant medicine use is a path of destruction. I'm not trying to suggest that, but I was definitely digging my own grave in my own way and convincing myself that I was on the higher road. And, you know, that's foolishness, you know? Some of my friends, you know, that we had psychedelic experiences with in high school ended up getting into the pills and getting into drinking too much. Some of them are still addicts to this day and have just always struggled with these things. And then other ones have just died, you know? And I always was trying to be like the positive influence among them. And I did that. I did somewhat good on that. You know, I definitely was always like, hey, come have fun. Let's just go smoke a joint and walk around, or let's just go do something fun, sober. You know, I was definitely that guy. But looking back, it's like, it burns my heart to know that I could have done so much better in being mindful and being a positive influence on my friend group. Because I was trying to show them like a spiritual path, but I was still so absorbed in my own flavor of hedonism that no wonder I didn't convince all of them. And no wonder so many of them ended up becoming drug addicts and all this stuff. It's like I wasn't being nearly as good. I was not being nearly as good of an example as I was striving to be. So it's just one of those tricky, bitter parts of the quest for me is having seen so many people go down a really bad road. And like I was saying a minute ago, seeing that people go down that bad road, I kind of felt like my road was like the highest road. But looking back, it's like I was just a couple of notches above total destruction. You know, there was still like these huge layers and layers of purity that I was completely unaware of because I was just convincing myself that I was righteous, you know? All right, so the last one on my notes, and then the video is almost over, so thank you guys for joining me and bearing with me through this 30 minutes. Would I do it all over again? If I could go back 20 years ago to 16-year-old Zach, would I make the same decisions that I made then to get to now? If I could go back and speak to Zach in 2005 or 2004, 2003, like early, mid-high school, whenever I started getting into all this and being comfortable being like the stoner guy and the guy that was doing all these plant medicines, if I could go back and talk to him now, I would advise him on the negative potentials, and I would advise him that less is more, and that fasting from all of this stuff periodically is a must. And that without fasting from all of it and letting go of all the things you desire and all the things you're clinging to, I would tell that Zach that you're going to end up in a place that you don't fully want to be unless you are periodically fasting from all of it. I'd also explain how beliefs and our conditioning is a sacred thing, and it's not meant to be demolished or recklessly toyed with through It's not meant to be demolished into a psychedelic Play-Doh to smush for fun and reform. That's the way I phrased it when I wrote it, and that's a good way to describe it. It's never as simple as just, oh, you can just unwire your conditioning and rebuild yourself, and then, oh, if it's not right, then next time do another psychedelic and turn the Play-Doh back into a ball, and you can turn it back into a perfect shaped star or something like that. It's not that simple. Your conditioning is a delicate thing, and everything you do in both your sober experiences and all your psychoactive use, all of that is going to affect your conditioning. And your beliefs, the things that you believe in life, I now see that your beliefs are like a compass, and they're pointing you in different directions. And if you start just thinking, oh, it's all just a game and it's a cosmic joke and you can play around and turn the compass this way and then a month later, turn the compass back around and get back to where you were. No. The compass navigation has a higher dimensional element to it. There's no like walk into the forest 100 feet and turn back and walk another 100 feet. When you walk back that 100 feet, the forest is different now. You're not in quite the same forest. The compass of our beliefs and the conditioning that we operate in is a delicate and beautiful thing that can either point us towards life or towards death, towards prosperity or towards destruction. Healthy checks and balances are needed with psychoactive plant use. In removing all belief, the idea of thinking I believe nothing and I'm just enlightened and I've transcended all my beliefs, that is not purity, but that is a derangement. That's what I would say to Zach now if I was able to go back and talk to him. I would try to challenge him on all of that, and I think I would probably be able to. I think I would probably be able to get through to him because that Zach had good enough intentions and was smart enough to understand some of this stuff. And that's why I'm here making this video for you guys. I don't want this video to be about religious beliefs and where I'm at now. Ultimately, I've landed in this like mystical version of Christianity, and that is an awesome topic that I love to unpack, and I'm grateful for because I really do feel like it helped me to, see the light and see the error of my ways. Intellect tree seeds, talking about Celestris. That's one of the plants I sell with Eternity in a box, and I love them. I think they're awesome. I would like to use those again soon. It's been a while since I've played with them. What was I saying? Basically, please be careful, guys. Please be mindful. I am not, even though I'm a Christian now, my current view is not that all these things are evil. I believe that God designed every single one of these plant medicines to have the exact properties that it has. And even things that are psychoactive, I don't think that was an accident. It's not like God designed the plant and then the devil came in and made it turn into a psychoactive. No, that's bizarre. That's a bizarre worldview. I believe God designed all of them to be perfect the way they are, and it's up to us to use them in moderation. The things that people are taking in these high doses that completely just like create these like really crazy experiences, some of that is people overusing and overdosing on the medicinal compound. Just like a lot of modern science is showing that psychedelic plants are antidepressant and are anti-anxiety and have all these medicinal benefits. Like, it's all about the proper dosage of those things. Because if you take, any antidepressant pill or something in too high of doses, it's probably really bad for you. And it's the same thing as psychedelic medicine. Are we meant to like go on these massive trips? I'm not sure, that's up for everybody to sort of decide on their own and figure out on their own. I don't think it's necessarily evil to do that, but I think that there's like with any psychoactives, there's definitely a chance that you are going to go down a bad road and negative repercussions from overdoing any of these things. So I would encourage everybody who uses psychoactive, from cannabis to coffee to psychedelics or anything, please be moderate and be mindful, check yourself. Listen to the people around you that are trying to challenge you and trying to kind of like wrangle you back into a sense of normalcy. You can still be a weirdo and go on the spiritual quest and be a weird poet like I was. Not all of that is bad, but don't become a total island just detached from everybody and think that you've got it figured out. Because if you do, you are going to be on a similar path as me, where you're going to overdo these things for like years and years before you ever actually come to your senses and start challenging it. So to end the video, I'm just going to talk just for a couple minutes about like the last 6 months for me. I've been, because people keep commenting stuff about Christianity, and I appreciate that. So I have been Christian for like 7 years now. And through most of that, I was still like really overdoing plant medicines. But in the past year, past like 8-9 months, I've been going to an Orthodox church, an Eastern Orthodox church. And part of the Eastern Orthodox practice is fasting regularly. And for them, the fasting is usually like abstaining from meat, or abstaining from like meat and dairy, or even like abstaining from all foods. But for me, coming into the church, something that I knew right off the bat, I'm like, okay, if these guys are fasting from things, I definitely need to put all the psychoactives that I do in those fasting days. So like every Wednesday and every Friday, the Orthodox Church fasts. And I've been abstaining from cannabis on all of those. And now I'm starting to add coffee into it and everything else. And like I said, I haven't been doing crazy amounts of psychedelics in the last like 10 years. That is not so much of an issue for me overusing those. It was 20 years ago, but it's not anymore. But I found it really beneficial to just start forcing myself to fast on certain days. And a lot of days I'll fast from Wednesday till Friday on them. And it's only just in the past like 2 months that I've been fasting way more from cannabis and from coffee, where I'm actually like, hold on, let me take a whole week off, or let me take 2 weeks off, or, you know, whatever. And right now I'm like, I haven't smoked in a week now. I think I had coffee one day, and I hadn't had it for a week before that either. And I'm proud of myself for that. It's progress. Some of you were like, a week without smoking? That's insane. That's as long as you've gone. But yeah, you know, it pretty much is. Like I've done a month off here and there. I was on probation 10 years ago, and I took 2 years off during that. So I was sort of forced to abstain. But during that period, I was still like idolizing that stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, when I can smoke again, I can't wait, you know? Whereas now I'm like, hey, it'd be nice, it'll be fun, you know, at some point, whether it's for medicinal function or even moderate recreational use. You know, the Orthodox Church views alcohol to be like in moderation, it's totally okay. And that's kind of the view that I am taking with cannabis and psychoactive plants in general. That in moderation, like there's nothing wrong with having like an enjoyable night, as long as it's prosperous to your mind and to your heart and to your beliefs, as long as it's not actually interfering with your life. It's like, it's probably totally okay to use those things periodically. So it's not like I'm landing in this like, oh, it's all evil mindset, you know? I just don't think it is. I don't think it's evil, and I think it's like I said earlier, I think it's a bizarre worldview to assume that all of it is like demonic. Like a lot of Christians would say, is like, oh, any plant medicine, that's demonic. That opens a portal to demons. I've had so many debates with friends online in the past like 7 years about that exact thing, where they're like, oh man, if you're a Christian, you got to just quit everything. The thing is about being a Christian is like, we have to be willing to give up everything. You know, you have to be willing to like give up the things that you desire in order for the greater good. You know, that's carrying the cross. That's that's putting yourself second and putting the world around you first. But I honestly still believe that, you know, cannabis, coffee, and moderate psychedelic use can absolutely fit into a prosperous growth for the human experience. And even more importantly than recreational use, psychedelics are profoundly medicinal when used in moderation and at the right time and right place. You know, like all the modern science is showing that these have, you know, mushrooms and things have antidepressant and anti-anxiety effects. Like, what is the more wise road to take? Whether you're Christian or not, you know, what do you think is the more wise road to take? Like, let's say you're dealing with anxiety and depression, and you've tried fasting from stuff, you've tried meditation and prayer and all these things. Like, you're trying to do lifestyle stuff to make your depression and your anxiety better, but you're still struggling. So what is the higher road? Are you going to go to a doctor and get a prescription for some anxiety medicine and try it for 2 months and let it build up in your brain chemistry and like see if it helps or something, and then try another one and try another one and try another one? I'm not knocking anyone that does Western medicine. I'm not meaning to belittle anyone. You know, we're all finding what works for us. And I'm not here to say all of that's inherently evil. But what is the more wise road between that and using moderate amounts of psychedelic plant medicines that God designed in order to create anti-anxiety and antidepressant effects that are shown and backed by modern Western medicine to be truly beneficial? You know, these plants are shown to be antidepressant and anti-anxiety in different ways. So from square one, if I'm dealing with depression and anxiety, you know, and I'm having to utilize a medicine, myself as an herbalist, of course I'm going to trust the plants. Of course I'm going to trust that is going to have less of a repercussion than doing some pharmaceutical that has all these like weird side effects and is going to take months to even see if it works, you know? Like medicinally speaking, I think these things are a huge blessing, and I'm still a huge advocate for not demonizing these plant medicines or demonizing people that utilize them responsibly. I think that's a dangerous thing for anyone to do, and especially, like I said, on my Christian walk, I'm very frustrated with some of my fellow Christians that will just look at anybody who ever touches a psychedelic plant as like choosing the lower road. Especially when some of those people are doing Western medicines to treat the same things that those plant medicines could use, you know? I would much rather take a microdose of a mushroom and go walk around out in the woods and see like the sunshine looking kind of bright and feeling in a good mood. I would much rather that be my medicine than some sort of pill that's gonna like screw up my liver over time, you know? So I'm gonna wrap it up here, guys. I'm still an advocate for all these things, and I'm definitely not knocking anybody, but I'm really hoping that this can be an inspiration to some of you And especially some of you who have stumbled upon this video at a time in your life where you are overusing things, or being a daily, all day, everyday cannabis user, or an all day, everyday coffee user, or an all day, everyday, well, not many people are all day, everyday psychedelic users, but if you're doing psychedelics like once a week or twice a week, or like multiple times a month for month after month after month after month after month, which I used to do, you're here to hear this, to ask yourself if this applies. You know, I can't, diagnose you. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what you're meant to do ultimately. But I do know that you're here to ask yourself that question, and I don't think it's random at all that you're here hearing this video. Somebody has commented saying that mushrooms help them break a cigarette addiction, and that's awesome. That's some of the neurological benefit that's very tangible, Like, we are all dancing through our neurology every day. Like, the reason why you have the habits you have is because your neurology has a certain pattern. So obviously something that is going to change your neurology and give your brain a chance to trim some of those branches and prune the neurological shape, of course it's going to help you to have a chance to break something that you consider an addiction. Like the things that you are fixating on, the reason why you fixate on them is because your neurology is shaped like that, where all the paths lead to it. My neurology, although I wasn't doing highly addictive stuff, my neurology was always pointing towards smoke another joint, drink some coffee, go out by yourself in the woods and write poems and all this. It's like, with better usage and more moderation, I probably would have seen that and noticed that. But, we all learn over time, and we all, like they say, hindsight is 20/20. Maybe it's not 20/20, but hindsight is definitely better than the sight that you have when you're looking at your life at any given moment. So thank you all for joining. Please comment and like and subscribe, and let me know what other kinds of videos that you would like to see on this channel. For the past 6 months, or the past year, the videos I've made have been Christian content, and that was before I was in the Orthodox Church, and now I'm starting to feel like I'm not competent to be a teacher of Bible and a Christian teacher, so I'm actually changing my rhythm, and I'm trying to lean back into a little bit more open-ended philosophy videos and plant medicine videos, because I'm an herbalist by profession. Like, this is like my trade, is the plant medicines. So like, I feel like that is where my feet touch the ground most realistically. And just because I'm a Christian, I'm now starting to see that that doesn't mean like I have to just be trying to teach the Bible in all the videos. I would love to still make some of that kind of content. So if you guys have any ideas and things that you would like to hear about, Christian stuff, that's cool. Just comment and let me know. But if you would also rather me just focus on plant medicines and philosophy and open-ended things, let me know that too, because I know that like 80% of my viewership on this channel was all before I was Christian. So I know a lot of you probably have no interest in hearing about the Christian stuff. And inevitably, you're going to hear everything I say come from a Christian disposition, because that is where my heart is at now. But what you can hear from this video is kind of my Christian disposition. So if you're just joining, go scroll back and watch earlier in the video. And I think those of you who have an aversion to Christianity but are interested in plant medicines, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the sort of balance that I'm finding in this communication about this topic. Yeah. Love you guys. Thank you so much for joining. Blessings on your path, and God be with you. Goodbye. How do I end this? Bye-bye.